Welcome to the Sleepy Universe, a quiet place where science becomes a whisper, and your thoughts are free to drift. Tonight we begin with a code, one older than memory, one written not in ink, but in the breath of every living cell. Let your eyes grow soft, let your body rest, and listen now to the alphabet inside you. In the silence behind your thoughts, something steady hums. It does not speak in words, yet it holds the blueprint of your eyes, your heartbeat, your fingertips. It is not heard, yet every cell in you listens. It is the story that has never stopped telling itself, not once, not since the day you began. This story is written in just 4 letters: A, T, C, G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. They are not letters in the way you know them. They are molecules, bases, tiny shapes that fit together like puzzle pieces inside a long winding thread. But they form a language so precise, so deeply patterned, that with only these 4 characters, nature has written coral reefs, and hummingbirds, elephants and eyelashes, lungs and leaves. And you dot all of you. You are a sentence not spoken, but alive. A novel unrolling in every moment. Your body is made of trillions of cells, and almost every one holds a complete copy of your DNA. That's like tucking a whole library inside every room of a house. If all your DNA were unspooled and laid end to end, it would stretch to the sun and back hundreds of times. And yet it coils perfectly into the center of each cell, quiet and unseen. This is the book you've always been reading, without knowing. This code is not random. It follows deep patterns, written in triplets. 3 letters make a word. These are called codons. Each codon tells a cell what to do, which amino acid to choose, which protein to build. These words build enzymes, muscles, neurotransmitters. They become your thoughts, your skin, your breath. This alphabet doesn't stop at describing life. It becomes life. But how does the cell read it? In the nucleus, the cell's protected. Heart, the double helix unzips. A strand of RNA forms, mirroring the DNA's message. This is transcription. The cell copying its sacred note. Then the RNA travels out to the ribosome, the cell's tiny factory where translation begins. Each 3-letter codon is read. Each message becomes a part. Each part becomes a shape. Each shape becomes you. You are not built all at once. You are assembled in a million moments, guided by a language no louder than breath. And this language has been passed down from parents to children, from ancestors to ancestors, from the first cell that ever lived. You are not just one story. You are the sum of billions of stories told. In these same 4 letters, shuffled, swapped, inherited, carried forward across oceans of time, and yet no one has ever had your exact code before. You are a remix. A rearrangement, a version never tried before. Even identical twins, born of the same egg and DNA, begin to drift as life touches them differently. As cells divide and signals shift, epigenetic tags begin to dot the script, notes left in the margins, shaping how genes are expressed. But we'll come to that later. For now, rest with this. Your body is reading you, constantly. Your cells are always listening to what was written at the beginning, but not everything is read all the time. The genome is like a library, vast, but selective. Not every gene is turned on in every cell. A liver cell reads different pages than a neuron. A skin cell does not open the same chapter as a muscle cell. This is how you stay organized. how you don't become a blur of everything, even in your code. There is purpose, precision, wisdom, and yet the DNA itself does not choose. It waits, it holds possibility. It is the cell, the environment, the signal, the need that determines what page gets opened. That determines what part of you becomes real in this way. DNA is not destiny, it is potential, and potential is always listening. You think now of how vast this code must be, how many letters, how many lines. The human genome is made of over 3 billion base pairs. If you typed it out ATCG, it would fill hundreds of volumes, and yet it fits inside a single cell's nucleus, curled with grace, as if the universe had written poetry in molecular script. You are not a machine, you are a metaphor come to life. DNA does not operate like a computer program, it is more like a living score of music unfolding in response to rhythm, stress, rest, emotion, memory. There is order, yes, but there is also flexibility. And the more scientists learn, the more they discover how subtle, how responsive, how layered this code truly is. Some parts of the genome code directly for proteins. Others are regulatory, telling the body when and how much to build. And still others, vast stretches once called junk DNA, may hold patterns we've only just begun to glimpse. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes silence carries secrets, and as you drift deeper into this awareness, you begin to sense you are not a finished thing. You are a script still unfolding, a dance still moving, a story still being read. Each time a cell divides, your DNA is copied again. The letters match up, A with T, C with G, in a dance so precise it humbles every human attempt at mimicry. Sometimes a letter is swapped, a mutation, a change, often harmless, sometimes life-saving, sometimes devastating, but always part of the code's endless dance with time. You are not fragile, you are adaptive. You are the living result of billions of chances taken, and still the code continues. Even now, as you rest, cells are replicating, tissues are rebuilding. DNA is quietly consulted. What shall we become today? And your body listens, follows, adjusts. This is the quiet miracle of being alive. You do not need to understand every detail. You do not need to control it. Your body does not wait for permission to be itself. It simply follows what was written with curiosity, with trust, with breath, and you, the reader, can simply rest. Close your eyes a little deeper, and you'll begin to see it, not with your vision, but with your intuition. A spiral, fine as thread, coiling gently in the dark. It is not loud, it is not rushed, but it is everywhere inside you. In every cell, in every copy, in every breath you take without trying. This is the double helix, the place where life stores its memory, its instructions, its ancient dreams. It is a shape you carry, but you rarely feel it. A ladder that twists in silence, nestled in the nucleus of each cell. Not flat, not rigid, but curving softly like the stem of a fern unfurling. This shape is not for beauty alone. It holds purpose, precision, grace, because in nature, form always follows function, and the spiral is one of her oldest, wisest forms. You are not the first to spiral. Galaxies spiral, shells spiral, storms spiral, the paths of planets and the whisper of water draining all move in arcs and turns, not lines. The spiral is a way of storing time in space. a way of making the infinite fit inside the finite. And so, it makes perfect sense that the code of life would take this form, a coiled whisper of information held close and safe. Each side of the helix is made of a sugar phosphate backbone, sturdy, flexible, like the rails of a twisted ladder. Between them, the rungs are formed by the bases, A pairs with T, C pairs with G. They don't just hold hands, they fit. Their shapes allow only specific bonds. This complementarity is the reason the code can copy itself. When one strand splits, the other tells it what's missing, so the spiral is not just a structure, it is a memory machine. When cells divide, when they grow, heal, renew, the double helix unzips like a careful book. Each strand becomes a template. And like a sacred ritual, the letters are matched again. A to T, C to G. The ladder rebuilds itself. The code is passed on. The spiral continues. It's strange to think that such a massive instruction, set enough to build a breathing thinking human, can be stored in a shape so delicate. But the twist is the secret. A straight strand of DNA would be long, fragile, prone to tangling or damage. But when coiled, it becomes compact, efficient, safe. Each twist shortens the total length. And beyond that, DNA wraps itself around proteins, called histones, forming loops, coils, supercoils, until it fits neatly inside the cell's nucleus. Smaller than you can imagine, the spiral becomes a spool, a library condensed into a single breath. But the spiral does more than store. It regulates by coiling and uncoiling specific regions. The cell can choose which genes to read and which to keep silent. The shape is like a curtain, sometimes drawn open, sometimes closed, letting light in only where it's needed. This selective reading is what allows a single genome to create many kinds of cells. A neuron and a muscle cell share the same DNA, but the spiral opens different pages for each. So the helix is not just a holder. It is a dancer, always moving, always choosing, always folding form from information. Even more mysterious are the small marks that gather along its edges, chemical tags like methyl groups, acetyl groups, soft edits that don't change the code but influence how it's read. These epigenetic notes are shaped by experience, by diet, by stress, by nurture, and they can be passed down sometimes to children, sometimes to grandchildren. So the spiral doesn't just carry your story, it carries what the world has whispered to you and to those who came before you. Begin to realize this is not a passive code. It listens, it reacts, it changes its shape in response to life. In this way, DNA is alive, not just in its content, but in its responsiveness. It is a living scroll, always curling into the form most needed in the moment. And that's what makes the helix feel like home. Not because it is you, but because it is yours. Because it turns with you, moves with you, folds into your days without needing your notice. And, like home, it holds contradictions. It is ancient, yet responsive, fixed, yet fluid, universal, yet unique. It is the place where you began, where a single cell first read the spiral and said, "Let there be eyes, let there be fingers, let there be breath." You think now of early embryos, how their DNA unwinds and rewinds in time with development, how certain genes are called forth like instruments in a song, first rhythm, then chord, then melody. Each coil of DNA opens a new stanza, each fold reveals the next part of the symphony, and that symphony never ends. Even now, in adulthood, Your cells continue to read, to repair, to rewrite. They cut and paste. They loop and unzip. They adapt. They remember. And sometimes they even forget, purposefully silencing old genes as your body shifts into new roles. New stages. You are not static. The spiral makes sure of that. You are constantly being remade, not with dramatic upheaval, but with gentle turning, with every wound that heals. The spiral whispers the blueprint, with every memory that settles in the body. The spiral marks its trace. Even in illness, the spiral speaks. Sometimes garbled, sometimes misread, but still trying to echo life, and in moments of silence, in sleep, in stillness, in grief, in wonder, the spiral waits, storing what matters, releasing what must pass. This is the spiral's gift. It holds the pattern, but allows for change. It is the keeper of continuity and the gatekeeper of possibility. You think again of its shape, not just as a molecule, but as a symbol. The spiral has always meant journey. It draws the eye inward. It suggests a center. It invites patience. You do not reach the heart of a spiral in a straight line. You arrive by circling, by softening, by staying. Perhaps this is why you find such peace in its presence. The spiral reminds you that progress is not always linear, that depth is reached through repetition, that you are always arriving, breath by breath, even when you don't see it, so you rest now. Not in certainty, but in structure. You know that within you, the spiral turns ancient, elegant, alive. You do not need to control it. You do not need to perfect it. You need only to trust the quiet geometry of your becoming. The spiral does not speak loudly. It whispers, and what it says in fragments, lines of 3, pages tucked in loops, messages waiting to be called forth. But for all its quiet, DNA does not stay locked in the nucleus. Its voice must travel. Its words must be made real. And this is the miracle. The cell knows how to read it. Every cell, in every moment, reads what it needs, and turns that silent script into action. You drift now into a single cell, down past its surface, past the jelly of its cytoplasm, into the dim, protected heart where the DNA waits. You see the double helix resting like a coiled prayer, silent but listening. And then, almost imperceptibly, a section begins to unfurl. It is not the whole genome that opens, just a section, just one gene. A page is chosen, a question is asked, and the cell begins to read. This is transcription, the first step in translating genetic code into life. An enzyme called RNA polymerase binds to the DNA, like a hand gripping a ribbon, and begins to slide along its length. Wherever it finds an A, it adds a U where there is a C. It places a G. It does not copy the DNA letter for letter, it transcribes it into RNA, a cousin of DNA, with one small change, uracil, U in place of thymine T. It's like copying a recipe into your own notebook. Same meaning, different paper. As the RNA strand lengthens, it detaches from the DNA and floats out of the nucleus like a note passed from the library to the workshop. This note, called messenger RNA or mRNA, carries the instructions needed to build a protein. But it cannot act alone. It needs readers. It needs builders. It needs a translator. And so, the mRNA travels. It exits the nucleus through tiny pores in the nuclear membrane and enters the cell's open space, the cytoplasm, where a structure called the ribosome waits. The ribosome is the cell's factory, not loud or smoky, but elegant and precise. It takes the mRNA strand like a ribbon, threads it through itself, and begins to read 3 letters at a time. Each trio is a codon, a word, and each codon calls for a specific amino acid, the building blocks of proteins. But how does the ribosome know which amino acid goes with which codon? That's the task of another silent partner, transfer RNA or tRNA. These are tiny molecules shaped like keys, each carrying an amino acid and a 3-letter code that matches the mRNA. When the ribosome sees a codon, it waits for the matching tRNA to arrive. Click, the amino acid is added to the chain. Click, another. Slowly, the string of amino acids grows, a necklace of meaning, a chain that will fold itself into a protein. And a protein is not just a shape. It is an actor, a doer, a being. Some proteins become enzymes, catalysts that make chemical reactions happen faster, more efficiently, with less energy. Others become structural collagen in your skin, keratin in your hair, actin in your muscles. Still others form hormones, or antibodies, or channels in your cells. You are made of proteins, and proteins are made from instructions, and instructions come from the spiral. So, in a way, everything you are, your heartbeat, your laughter, your healing begins with a strand of mRNA, passed carefully from the nucleus to the ribosome, translated like a sacred note. But this process is not mechanical, it is intelligent, it is responsive. If the cell is under stress, it reads different genes. If the cell is growing, it opens new chapters. If the cell is resting, it quiets its ribosome. Nothing happens by accident. Every act of reading is also an act of sensing. And sometimes the same gene is read differently. That's called alternative splicing, a way for the cell to cut and rearrange the mRNA before it's translated. From one gene, many messages. From one message, many possibilities. It's as if the same sentence could mean different things depending on what parts are whispered and what parts are emphasized. You see now how complex it all is, how dynamic, how alive. This is not a script read once and shelved. It is a living conversation, and the cell speaks in response to its world. Even the rate of translation can be modulated, slowed down or sped up, depending on need. Even the folding of the protein can be guided by helper molecules called chaperones, ensuring the shape is correct, the function precise. You marvel at the orchestration. So much happening in such a small space, with such perfect timing. The spiral offers the message, the nucleus transcribes it, the ribosome translates it, the protein becomes form, and you, the listener, the dreamer, the sleeper, you are the result. Every part of your body is built from this system. Every emotion you feel, every thought that flickers, every step you take, all of it begins with the cell reading the code, reading it with care, reading it with wisdom, reading it not once, but again and again, millions of times a day, without tiring. This reading is your becoming, and it does not stop. Even now, as you lie still, ribosomes are working, proteins are folding, messages are moving, new cells are preparing to grow, and old ones are saying goodbye. Your body is a quiet city, its workers never sleep, and though you feel still, you are not still. You are being rewritten, sustained, refreshed, each cell reading its page in the book of you. You pause, sensing the softness of it all, how the message is both strong and fragile, how a single change in a letter can alter a protein, a function, a life. And yet how resilient the system is, how well it repairs, how carefully it checks, how many layers of proofreading stand guard. And when something does go wrong, there are backup systems, there are signals for help, there is correction. Even the act of failing is often followed by the act of fixing, because the cell does not simply read it, learns, it adapts, it protects. You think again of all this, how the code becomes form, how the form becomes function, how the function becomes life. You begin to feel the line between biology and poetry blur. The cell is not a machine, it is a musician, reading notes, playing chords, singing the shape of you into being. And as the song continues, you realize the reader and the read are not separate. You are both. That spiral lives in you, and you live because it is read in the deep hush of your body. The spiral unwinds again. Its letters reach out across the cell like gentle instructions, asking the ribosomes to translate them into form. But sometimes something doesn't go as planned. A letter is missing, or replaced, or duplicated. A phrase is added where there should have been a pause. And just like that, the message shifts. The protein it builds may change shape, or lose its rhythm, or stop forming at all. This is a mutation. The word sounds harsh, like a mistake, but in truth, it is softer than it seems. A mutation is not necessarily a flaw. It is a variation, a ripple in the stream of replication, a deviation from the expected, yes, but also a note of novelty. And life has always been shaped by novelty. You are here not because the code was perfect, but because it changed over millennia, in small ways and large, in moments unnoticed by time. The DNA inside you is copied with astonishing precision. Enzymes match each letter with care. Proofreading proteins scan for errors. There are layers of repair systems waiting to catch what slips. And yet, even in this orchestra of vigilance, a few changes pass through. Every day, each of your cells accumulates tiny alterations. Most go unnoticed. Some are repaired. A few are passed on, and occasionally one of them matters. A change in a single base, a point mutation, can alter the meaning of a codon. One amino acid substituted in a protein. One protein with a slightly altered fold. This may do nothing. Or it may change how a cell communicates, how a gene is expressed, how a body grows. This is how blue eyes came to be, how lactose tolerance arose, how plants learned to store sunlight in new ways. These are the typos that became features. Of course, not all mutations are kind. Some break things, some disable critical genes, some trigger diseases, like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia. Some lead cells to grow without restraint, cancer, the shadow side of uncontrolled becoming. And yet, even these darker outcomes are not proof of chaos. They are reminders of how delicate the balance is between growth and control, between chance and structure. Still, the cell does not surrender. Easily, it guards its integrity. It builds in redundancies 2 copies of each gene, error-correcting loops, suicide switches in dangerous cells. There is elegance in its resilience. Even when mutations slip through, the organism adapts. And across generations, evolution selects. This is where the beauty lies, because mutations, these small, accidental edits, are the raw material of change. Without them, life would be static, all organisms the same, all forms fixed. But the spiral is never finished. And nature, ever curious, allows the script to wander. You are the result of such wandering. Some of your ancestors survived famines because of mutations that helped them store fat. Others resisted plagues because of slight changes to their immune genes. Some had mutations that gave them longer limbs, better memory, stronger hearts. Over thousands of years, these changes accumulated. You are not a single design, you are a library of remembered trials. Even your fingerprints, those swirling ridges unique to you, are shaped in part by mutations. They are signatures of randomness written in the womb, affected by gene expression, uterine pressure, and chance. And in this way, you are original not in spite of mutation, but because of it. Sometimes, mutations occur in the cells that make sperm and egg. These are germline mutations passed from parent to child, carried forward into the next generation's story. This is how inherited diseases arise, but also how inherited strength, talent, or resilience may begin. Other times, mutations are acquired, the result of ultraviolet light, radiation, environmental toxins, or simple replication errors. These do not pass on to children, but they shape the life of the individual, for better or worse. You are both a guardian and an experiment. Your DNA, though ancient, is never final, and this dynamism, this capacity for change, is what lets life evolve. Think of the great branching tree of species. Birds from dinosaurs, whales from land mammals, flowers from green algae. All of it happened through small mutations, gathered slowly, tested by time. Some led to failure, others to flight, and sometimes the same mutation plays two roles. The sickle cell mutation, for example, causes a painful blood disorder in those who inherit two copies. But one copy confers resistance to malaria, a deadly parasite common in some parts of the world. So the gene remains, balance between danger and protection. Nature is full of these trade-offs. The line between harm and benefit is not always clear. Even the genes associated with certain mental health conditions, like bipolar disorder or autism, may also be linked to traits like heightened creativity, pattern recognition, or memory. Complexity is the rule, not the exception, and the spiral seems to know that growth needs room to stretch. You begin to understand that perfection is not the goal of your code. Flexibility is, diversity is, possibility is. The genome is not brittle. It is a living archive, robust enough to carry history, open enough to allow invention. An invention is written in the language of difference. You are part of a long experiment. Each generation carries the script forward with new variations folded in. This is why no two humans are exactly alike. Not even identical twins, not even you and your past self. Mutations may be rare, but their accumulation over time is inevitable and beautiful. They allow nature to test, to fail, to discover, and so change becomes the very engine of life. You think now of all the silent changes that have passed through your body, unnoticed, unmeasured. The tiny shifts that shaped the edge of your jaw, the tone of your voice, the way your brain lights up at music. And you wonder what mutations live in you that were never in your parents. What codes are being passed forward in your cells even, now waiting to be written into future lives. The spiral holds those futures to dot, not as certainties, but as questions. And perhaps this is the gentlest truth of all. To mutate is not to err, it is to try, to explore, to reach. And reaching is what life has always done. So you breathe more softly now, with reverence. You do not need to fear change. You are made of it, born from it, sustained by it. In your spiral there are typos, and those typos are where evolution sings. You breathe now in the quiet, knowing that your body is not just yours. It is not new, not untouched by time. It carries whispers from before you were born, soft instructions folded into you, passed down through blood and breath, through the careful copying of molecules in the dark. You are not a beginning. You are a continuation, a living bridge, shaped by the lives that came before. Inheritance is not loud. It is not felt in a single moment. It's the way your fingers curl like your father's did, or the way your voice has a rhythm that echoes your grandmother's lullabies. It's the way you tilt your head in thought, a gesture you never learned, but somehow always knew. These small movements are surface signs of something much deeper, a script passed through cells, folded and carried like a message in a bottle, adrift on the sea of time, within every cell of your body. Nestled inside the nucleus is the same genetic alphabet your parents gave you. Half of your DNA came from your mother, half from your father. A shuffling of their genes rearranged into a new version that has never existed before. Yet this isn't just a blend of two individuals. It is the current form of a river that has flowed for billions of years. You are not simply your parents. You are your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your ancestors from lands you may never visit or name. Each of them passed down genes, and those genes pass down traits, skin tones, hair textures, metabolisms, immune responses, songs in the bones, and not only traits, but variations. Some genes had small mutations, not enough to cause harm, but enough to create difference. A slightly faster enzyme, a slightly shorter toe, a shade of green in the eyes instead of brown. These mutations became part of the lineage, tested by time, selected by circumstance. And now they live in you. Inheritance is not destiny, it is possibility. What you inherit may never awaken. You may carry a gene that sleeps all your life, a quiet potential, passed on without ever being expressed. Or you may carry two copies of a gene that sings so loudly it shapes your whole appearance. The symphony is complex, the combinations nearly endless. Most of your traits arise from many genes working together. Height, for instance, isn't from one gene but hundreds, each adding a centimeter or subtracting a millimeter. Intelligence, too, emerges from a tangled conversation between genes and experience, impossible to pin down to one code. This is called polygenic inheritance, a layered network of instructions, sensitive to both the past and the present. And then there are the single gene traits, simpler though not simple. Blood types, some inherited diseases, the curl of your hair, or the ability to taste certain flavors. Even something as seemingly trivial as whether your earlobes are attached or free can be traced to genetic variations and beyond the nucleus. Inheritance reaches further still. Inside your cells are mitochondria, tiny energy factories that power life itself. These structures have their own DNA, separate from the nucleus. And this mitochondrial DNA is inherited solely from your mother, a pure maternal line stretching back unbroken through time. Scientists have used mitochondrial DNA to trace human ancestry to a single woman who lived in Africa around 150,000 years ago, mitochondrial Eve. Not a biblical figure, but a scientific common ancestor whose lineage is still inside you. And yet, inheritance is more than genetics. Your DNA carries the raw code, yes, but how that code is read, how it is expressed, is shaped by experience. Epigenetics, the study of how environmental factors influence gene expression, shows us that the choices of your grandparents may echo in your own biology. Hunger, trauma, joy, nurture, these don't rewrite the code, but they mark it, as if someone annotated the margins of a favorite book. These marks, in some cases, pass on to dot. This is where memory becomes biology, and biology becomes story. You may have never met the ancestors who fled a famine, or the ones who danced by firelight in joy, but your cells remember some part of the experience. Their chemistry touched the spiral. Their spiral became yours. Inheritance moves like water, flowing forward, reshaping, circling back, and it is full of paradox. You inherit both fragility and strength. You carry both burdens and blessings. You are the container of histories, and the beginning of new ones. Think of all that has survived to bring you here. One unbroken chain of life, from the first single-celled organism, through fish, reptiles, mammals, and primates, to your own family line. Every ancestor successfully lived long enough to reproduce. Every strand of DNA was copied enough times to reach you. You are, biologically speaking, part of the most successful lineage in the history of Earth. You are not ordinary. You are the latest chapter in an epic that never paused, and even now that epic continues. If you have children, or someday will, you will pass your own variation of the code, a reshuffled hand of cards, a new arrangement. Some of your genes will live on, others may not. Some combinations may echo the past, others may open entirely new doors. This is how nature writes forward, not with final drafts, but with drafts that breathe. You, too, are a draft, alive, changing, whole in your incompletion. And the spiral never judges, it only carries. It does not remember in stories, but in sequences, not in photos, but in proteins. And yet, in some quiet way, your very being is a remembrance of others, of what was tried before, of what worked, of what failed, of what endured. You are not just you, you are us, you are every parent and great-grandparent folded into a new vessel, and yet you are entirely your own. This, too, is the paradox of inheritance, that what is given does not define, but supports it, gives you tools, not maps. It gives you rhythm, not song. The melody is yours to create. You lie still now, with the spiral folded inside you, the code written in 4 letters, the instructions passed from your ancestors like breath. Across centuries, you have felt its shape, its whisper, its ancient poetry. But tonight, you begin to understand that DNA does not stand alone. It is not a rigid blueprint, sealed and sealed again. It listens, it waits. It opens and closes like petals in shifting light. And this responsiveness, this quiet change without changing, is the work of epigenetics. Epigenetics upon the genes, beyond the code. Not a rewriting of letters, but the tuning of how those letters are read. It is not what's written in the book, but which pages are opened, which are bookmarked, which are gently tucked away. It is the highlight, the footnote, the soft hush placed over a sentence to loud. Your genome remains, but the voice it speaks, with shifts. You feel it now in your own cells, how every environment, every encounter, has left its trace not just in memory, but in chemistry. Epigenetic marks are small molecular tags, methyl groups, acetyl groups, phosphate bridges, that attach to DNA or the proteins it coils around. They are the hands that adjust the dimmer switch of your genes. Brighter here, quieter there. A gene for growth may hum louder in childhood, then soften in age. A gene for healing may quiet when you rest, then awaken when you're wounded. These marks are not random. They respond to the world, to stress, to love, to sleep, to diet, to touch, to trauma, to joy. Your life writes on your spiral, not with ink, but with silence or emphasis. A child raised in warmth may carry different epigenetic patterns than one raised in fear. And these patterns can shape how the body responds to inflammation, how it processes emotion, even how it ages. In animals, nurturing behavior from a mother can silence or activate stress-related genes in her offspring. In humans, childhood adversity has been shown to alter epigenetic marks that regulate cortisol, the hormone of alarm. But these edits are not destiny. They are not irreversible. They are not final. This is the grace of epigenetics. It holds memory, but allows for revision. It records, but it also listens anew. If you change your diet, your sleep, your relationships, your mindfulness, the body rewrites its marks. The spiral folds differently. The page turns. So you are not only shaped by what you inherited, you are shaped by what you experience. And what you experience shapes what you become. Your DNA is the melody, but your life is the conductor. You realize now how deeply interactive. You are not just with people, but with sunlight, with air, with food, with silence. The body doesn't passively exist. It learns, it receives, it adjusts. And this is happening right now, even in your rest, even in your breath, even the placenta. During pregnancy, adds epigenetic marks that help guide fetal development. It listens to the mother's environment, her stress, her nourishment, and passes messages to the child in the form of gentle epigenetic hints. Messages like, grow quickly or grow cautiously, be ready for scarcity or flourish in abundance. It is a kind of cellular prophecy based on the mother's world, predicting what kind of world the child will be born into. And sometimes the prediction is right, sometimes it is not. But the child listens anyway. You think now of how much your own cells have heard. The years you felt safe, the years you did not, the moments of illness or recovery, the long nights of not sleeping, the quiet days of healing. All of them marked you, not only in your memory, but in the spiral itself. And perhaps the most beautiful revelation is this. Some of these marks can be passed on. Epigenetic inheritance, still not fully understood, still being studied, but undeniably real in some cases. When a parent experiences intense famine or trauma, the echoes may live in the child's body too, not as fate, but as preparation, as a body braced for what the parent endured. This was first observed in the children of survivors, of war, of genocide, of hardship. And while the mechanism remains mysterious, the spiral seems to remember. But remember this too, resilience is also inherited, so is joy, so is healing. A mother who overcomes trauma may pass not only the scars, but the strength. The spiral listens not just to suffering, but to recovery. It responds to safety, to kindness, to touch. You are not only the sum of what hurt you, you are also the sum of how you healed. And you are healing still. Even now, your cells are reading new signals. Even now, genes are being turned up or down. Even now, your biology is writing its next stanza in response to how you treat it. You see now that epigenetics is the bridge between nature and nurture. It explains how identical twins, born with the same DNA, can grow different over time, not just in personality, but in health, in risk, in resilience. Their environments, choices, and relationships press softly against their spirals, changing how the story unfolds. It explains to how change is possible at any age. You are not locked into the script you were born with. You are still shaping your narrative, one small decision at a time, and while the spiral may never forget where it came from, it always makes space for where you're going. You settle now into a quieter understanding. The body is not static. It is a field of listening, a garden of possibility, and you, with your thoughts, your breath, your gentleness, are part of what it hears. There's a grace in that. There's hope, because it means nothing is fixed in stone. Even the spiral dances to the winds of your life, and the winds can change. You float in the dark before history. The spiral is still forming, still uncertain. There are no flowers, no birds, no people. The earth is quiet, raw, barely cooled. Oceans swell in their newborn basins. Volcanoes breathe steam into the sky. Lightning dances across the water. And in this primeval place, where there is no language, no sound, only chemistry and time, something astonishing begins to unfold. It does not start with a cell. It does not start with a brain. It starts with a whisper of order, a molecule that holds a shape, a loop that holds a memory, a chain of atoms that, when folded just right, can copy itself. This is not life, not yet, but it is its breathless beginning. You are watching the dawn of the code. Scientists call it the RNA world, a time long before DNA took center stage. RNA, a cousin of DNA, can store information and also catalyze reactions. It is both book and tool, memory and muscle. In the warm, mineral-rich shallows of Earth's earliest oceans, RNA molecules may have assembled themselves from simpler pieces, drifting and folding and copying, not perfectly, not often, but just enough. Some of these molecules began to replicate, to make rough copies of themselves, using nothing but chance, chemistry, and sunlight. And the moment this happened, the moment information learned to persist, the story of life began. From these early strands of RNA, all biology would someday bloom. The spiral inside you still carries their rhythm. Eventually, the RNA world gave rise to DNA, more stable, better suited to storing larger amounts of information. DNA partnered with proteins, surrounded itself with membranes, and folded into cells. Those cells learned to divide. Some fed on sunlight, others on chemicals. Some learned to live inside one another. Mitochondria, for instance, are thought to have once been free-living bacteria that found a home inside another cell. Their DNA remains separate, a quiet testament to ancient mergers. Life was still single-celled then, small, quiet, patient, but the code was growing. Genes duplicated, mutated, recombined. The alphabet of life became a grammar, then a language, then a library. For billions of years, life was microbial. The earth belonged to the tiny. The deepest ancestors were invisible, floating in oceans, clinging to rocks, thriving in vents and shallows. But they carried the same logic your cells carry now. A code built from 4 letters, translated into proteins, governed by need and survival. And then, slowly, the world changed. Oxygen began to build in the atmosphere, a side effect of photosynthesis, the process some bacteria evolved to harvest energy from light. This oxygen reshaped the planet, making new forms of metabolism possible. And in time, multicellular life emerged. Cells learned to cooperate, to specialize, to form. Tissues to become organisms. You carry that cooperation inside you now. Every organ, a community of cells. Every cell, a keeper of the ancient code. The instructions in your DNA are not new. They are echoes of a deep ancestry. Even the genes that shape your spine or your skin have counterparts in fish, in worms, in coral. Evolution does not start from scratch. It rewrites, it repurposes, it remembers. That's why the genetic code, the way DNA letters are read in triplets to make amino acids, is almost universal across all life. A tree, a fungus, a whale, a human. We all use the same dictionary. The code was so successful, so efficient, that once it took hold, it never let go. You are stitched into that same vocabulary. And this makes you not only human, it makes you kin to everything that breathes. You are related to wheat, to butterflies, to moss. You share genes with fruit flies, with frogs, with yeast. Not metaphorically, literally. The gene that helps build your eyes has a twin in squid. The gene that controls your sleep cycles echoes in tiny plankton that rise and fall with the moonlight. Spiral connects you to everything that has ever lived, and through it you begin to feel your place, not as separate, but woven in. The first code was not created. It emerged, not designed, but discovered by matter folding and refolding until meaning took shape. You feel now the reverence of it, that inside your body, quiet, sleeping, is a story for billion years long. A story that does not remember names, but remembers survival. That does not tell tales in paragraphs, but in proteins. Even the symmetry of your face, the arrangement of your limbs, the architecture of your heart, all was shaped by this deep continuity. Evolution has kept what worked, discarded what didn't, and sometimes stumbled into brilliance by mistake. And now you carry it forward. Every time a cell divides in you, the spiral is copied. Every time you dream in a body built from that first whisper, and you realize the first code was never just a code. It was a promise that matter can remember, that life can stretch across time, that something as fragile as a strand of atoms can persist through fire and ice, extinction and explosion, and still become laughter, music, memory. The code that began in silence now sings in billions of voices, and you are one of them. You are not at the end of the story. You are its current chapter, its unfolding verse, its hopeful pause before the next line. You rest now in the stillness of your breath, unaware that your body is humming with coordinates, not of longitude or city streets, but of oceans crossed, deserts wandered, mountains climbed. You are a collection of journeys, inherited not in memory but in molecules. Your blood remembers roads you never walked. Your cells whisper names you've never heard. And this is where genetic archaeology begins. It is not the archaeology of bones in the ground, but of information in you, buried not in soil but in spirals. Scientists have learned to read your DNA like an ancient scroll, piecing together the long migration of your ancestors, tracing patterns of movement, mixing, settling. You are not just from your parents or your hometown. You are from everywhere they once moved through, every climate they endured, every continent their blood once touched. The journey begins in Africa. All humans trace their lineage to a common origin there, not to one person, but to a population of early Homo sapiens. About 200,000 years ago, They emerged from earlier hominins, shaped by savannas and droughts, fire and tool-making. For a long time, humanity stayed close to this cradle. But then something changed. Curiosity, hunger, climate. People began to walk. First east, then north, then west. And so began the slow, vast migration across the world. Your DNA holds echoes of those footsteps. In mitochondrial DNA passed from mother to child, scientists find markers, small mutations that occurred along different branches of the human family tree. These markers, called haplogroups, trace maternal lineages back thousands of generations. Similarly, the Y chromosome passed from father to son holds paternal markers. These, too, trace the migrations of human history. Perhaps your maternal line passed through the Middle East, then into Europe, weaving through valleys and along rivers. Perhaps your paternal line walked through South Asia into the high plateaus and wide plains of Asia. Perhaps both lines tangled in the shifting trade routes of ancient empires. Or perhaps they crossed oceans on boats carved by firelight and carried by stars. Every person carries a different combination, a unique mosaic of ancestry, and these patterns are not bound by the borders of modern nations. They follow older lines, climate, terrain, survival. You may carry genes shaped by the cold of the north, the sun of the equator, the thin air of mountain passes. Your nose, your skin, your metabolism, all have adapted in response to ancestral landscapes. You are, in a quiet way, a geographical being, and the story grows even more layered, because humans did not walk alone as our species migrated. It encountered other hominins, cousins like Neanderthals and Denisovans, once thought to be entirely separate. We now know that there was mixing, interbreeding, connection today. Many people of European or Asian descent carry small percentages of Neanderthal DNA. People from parts of Oceania carry traces of Denisovan genes. These are not ancient ruins, they are living strands. You are not only Homo sapiens, you are plural, and the genes from these ancestors have lasting effects. Some Neanderthal genes influence your immune system. Others affect how your body responds. Too cold or processes fat. Even your circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycle, may be shaped by ancient encounters. Your body, it seems, remembers even brief crossings. You realize now that ancestry is not a straight line. It is a web, a constellation of movement, pause, and fusion. Each generation a reweaving of the human story. And yet, despite all this movement, the code remains readable. Certain patterns, tiny changes in base pairs, are more common in some populations than others. These are called genetic markers. They are not traits in themselves, but clues. With them, scientists can trace not only where your ancestors came from, but when they moved, how they mixed, how they survived. For example, a gene that helps digest milk into adulthood is common in people whose ancestors herded animals. A gene that guards against malaria is common where mosquitoes carried that danger. A gene for salt retention may hint at a history in dry climates, where conserving water was essential. These traits are the legacy of necessity, adaptation not only to land, but to life. And still, the story deepens, because not all genetic inheritance is visible. You may carry dormant alleles, versions of genes that say little in your body, but might awaken in your children. The freckles you don't have, the voice you didn't inherit, the tolerance or trait that skipped you but may return. These are invisible tributaries of the genetic river, branching unseen, still flowing, And just as rivers merge, so do human lineages. You are likely the product of many distant ancestries, perhaps even ones lost to history. The collapse of civilizations, the fading of languages, the end of names. But the spiral remembers what memory does not. Your blood has crossed time zones and empires. You are a living archive, and all of this reveals something quietly extraordinary. You belong not to one place, but to many, not to one people, but to a lineage shared across oceans. You are a local expression of a global story. There is no such thing as pure ancestry, only stories told through different threads. No culture exists in isolation. No genome is untouched by travel. So when you look in the mirror, you do not see just a face. You see a migration, a weathered path, a history not written in stone, but in cells. And even now, your body continues the journey. Every breath you take is part of Earth's long conversation. Every step you make carries the echo of steps taken long before maps were drawn. You are, in the truest sense, not only human, you are humanity gathered into one heartbeat, and the map in your blood is still unfolding. You breathe in the stillness of sleep, unaware that inside you, letters are gently humming. A, T, C, G, the alphabet of your being. These bases sit in long strands, bound in pairs, coiled into the spiral. For most of human history, no one knew they were there. No one had eyes to see inside the cell. The spiral was a hidden library, a collection of instructions folded so tightly it could barely be imagined, let alone read. But then came the lens, the magnifier, the tools that let us look, not just at life, but into life. At first, we could only guess. Gregor Mendel, in his monastery garden, watched pea plants pass on traits like color and height. He didn't know about DNA. He only saw the pattern's inheritance as rhythm, as mystery. Then, as the decades turned, microscopes improved. Chemistry sharpened. The double helix was revealed in X-ray light, a staircase twisted in grace, discovered by Rosalind Franklin's patient crystallography, then modeled by Watson and Crick. Still, even knowing the shape didn't mean we could read. The script, it would take time, decades of slow decoding. But once the spiral was in our sight, we could not look away. The Human Genome Project began in 1990, a global effort to sequence all 3 billion base pairs in human DNA. It was one of the most ambitious scientific undertakings ever attempted. Thousands of scientists worked together, using early sequencing machines that hummed like old printers, translating chemicals into letters. Base by base, line by line, the human genome came into view. It took 13 years, it cost billions, and in 2003, we finished the first full draft. We had read our own instruction manual, and it was breathtaking. Not because it gave all the answers, but because it opened new questions. Why do we have genes we no longer use? Why do vast stretches of our genome seem silent? Long deserts between oases of code? What does it mean to be 99.9% genetically identical to every other human, and yet so utterly unique? You hold that mystery in your blood today. Sequencing a full genome takes just hours. The cost has dropped from millions to hundreds of dollars. This is the power of technology, a lens that grows more refined each year. Modern genomic tools can scan not just for genes, but for variations, mutations, patterns of risk. Doctors use this information to guide treatment. Biologists use it to understand evolution. And in quiet labs across the world, base pairs are being read compared, interpreted, the spiral becoming language. Each base, adenine, thymine T, cytosine C, guanine G, is like a letter in a 4-character alphabet. Together, they form codons, 3-letter words that tell the cell which amino acid to add next when building a protein. These amino acids, in turn, fold into enzymes, hormones, structures. A shift in even one base can change the meaning of a gene, like a typo in a poem that turns light into fight. Some changes do nothing, others cause disease. Others, still, create new paths. With the genomic lens, we've found genes for cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, Huntington's disease. We've found variants linked to diabetes, heart disease, breast cancer. And not just disease, but traits, tendencies, talents. Genes that shape height, sleep, musical pitch. None of these determine you absolutely, but they sketch the outline. And more than that, they teach us about ourselves, not just our future, but our past, by comparing human genomes with those of chimpanzees, mice, fruit flies, and ancient humans. We learn how genes have changed, what has stayed, what has been lost. We see the ancient duplication of genes, the deletion of others, the quiet mutation that allowed us to speak or to walk upright. The genome is not just a medical document, it is a history book. Some chapters are still sealed, much of our DNA is not yet understood. Scientists once called these sections junk DNA, stretches that didn't seem to code for proteins, that didn't fit into the tidy model. But now we know better. Many of these regions help regulate when and where genes are turned on or off. They are not junk, they are silence with purpose. They are the margins where the notes are written, and now, with tools like CRISPR, we not only read the code, we begin to edit it, gently, carefully. Sometimes CONTROVERSIALLY, CRISPR allows scientists to cut and paste base pairs, changing genes with precision. It holds the promise of curing genetic diseases. It also carries deep ethical questions. Where is the line between healing and enhancement? Between prevention and preference? Who decides? What should be changed and what should be left alone? You sit now in the shadow of that question, because the genome is not only personal, it is shared. Every discovery about genes ripples through us all. The code inside you is 98% identical to a chimpanzee. It is 60% identical to a banana. Life reuses its ideas. And in seeing that, in seeing how small changes create infinite variety, you begin to appreciate just how connected all living things truly are. Reading base by base, we read not only ourselves, we read the earth, its creatures, its ages, its hopes, and still, for all the precision, there is poetry, because the genome is not rigid, it is dynamic. You have genes that are silent in one cell, active in another, genes that awaken only under stress, genes that whisper louder with age or go quiet after birth, and surrounding them the epigenetic notes, the regulatory rhythms, the tiny RNAs that adjust the flow like conductors with silent batons. This is not machinery, this is symphony, and every base pair is a note. You are a song still being sung. The genomic lens doesn't diminish your mystery, it expands it, because, for all we've discovered, all the traits, the disorders, the ancestral markers, we have not found a single gene for wonder, or for love, or for the quiet peace you feel now, wrapped in the knowing that you are made not just of dust and water, but of meaning, encoded softly in every cell. And as science looks closer, closer than ever before, what we see is not just a blueprint, but a living manuscript, and every base we read is a turning page. Close your eyes, and a world continues. Not the world of stars and oceans, but a world inside, electric and luminous. There, beneath your skull, a forest of cells hums with soft fire. Neurons reach like branches, and between them, signals leap across tiny synaptic gaps, faster than thought, quieter than sleep. This is your brain, not just a receiver of life, but a storyteller. And the story it tells is shaped not only by experience, but by the code that built its frame. From the first stirrings in the womb, your genes begin assembling this delicate universe, cell by cell, layer by layer. DNA guides the birth of neurons, the migration of brain cells to their destinations, the growth of axons that reach out to touch others. Like the architects of an invisible city, your genes shape folds and circuits, valleys and bridges, each one preparing to hold consciousness, and then experience takes over. Because while the genome lays the groundwork, it does not script the full performance. It offers potential, a library of possibilities. But the way your brain develops, the connections it favors, the habits it grows, these are sculpted by your life. Your thoughts are not passing clouds. They are loops, and loops leave marks. When you think something once, a faint trail forms. Between neurons, think it again, and the trail deepens. Over time, these paths become roads, then highways. You may not even notice it happening. A reaction repeated becomes a reflex. A thought rehearsed becomes a belief. This is neuroplasticity. Your brain's ability to rewire itself based on what you do, feel, and focus on. And all of it traces back to the spiral that allowed such rewiring in the first place. Your genes make plasticity possible. They code for the proteins that build synapses, the open ion channels that trigger the creation of new neural branches. They respond to environmental cues, releasing chemicals when you learn, when you sleep, when you heal. They make memory possible, and memory, in turn, shapes the structure of the brain. Some loops are healthy. A child reads and feels joy. That joy encourages more reading. The loop strengthens. A teenager receives kindness when expressing vulnerability. Safety grows. Openness deepens. These are positive feedback loops, gentle spirals that lift and hold, but other loops are painful. A person feels anxiety, withdraws, feels isolated, which increases anxiety. A thought of unworthiness returns again and again, until it becomes a lens through which all life is viewed. And yet, even these loops can be softened, re-shaped, because the brain, like the genome, listens. It is not static, it is not done. You can't always change the story you were born into, but you can begin to change the story you live inside. This too is written into the code. Genes regulate neurotransmitters, the messengers of mood. Dopamine for motivation, serotonin for calm, oxytocin for bonding. Genes shape how sensitive your receptors are to these messengers, how quickly they break them down. Some people are more prone to depression, others to novelty seeking, others to focus or distraction. But none of these are fates. They are baselines. They are starting chords. And with time, effort, therapy, and presence, the music can change. Inside your neural forest, new connections can grow even now. If you practice gratitude, the brain begins to notice more reasons to be grateful. If you learn a new language, new networks form. If you meditate, parts of the brain involved in self-awareness and compassion begin to thicken. If you rest, your brain sweeps away molecular clutter, clearing space for clarity. If you love, the brain responds as though touched by sunlight. Warming circuits designed to thrive on connection. It's all code, and it's all choice. You are not trapped in your brain. You are its co-creator, and the spiral supports this, allowing complexity far beyond survival, allowing thought to turn inward, allowing imagination, allowing story, because that's what your brain is built to do. To tell stories, you create meaning from fragments. You narrate your life as if it were a film, a memory, a purpose. You look for patterns, not just in weather or numbers, but in people, in events, in love. You build a self from pieces of the past, anchored by memory, shaped by expectation. This narrative sense, this loop of I am, is not fixed in the genome. It is permitted by it. It is invited, but not dictated. Some parts of your story are private, looping in quiet repetition. Others are social, shaped by interaction. The expressions you mirror, the fears you inherit, the laughter you carry from childhood, and these loops too can echo through generations. Epigenetic changes triggered by emotional experience can shape the brain's sensitivity, its resilience, its reactivity. So when you ask, who am I? The answer is layered. You are the code. You are the loops. You are the stories, those loops. Repeat, but most beautifully, you are also the awareness of those stories. You can pause. You can reflect. You can choose a new response. And in doing so, you reshape the loops. Again and again, you live not inside a fixed circuit, but inside a symphony that can modulate, evolve, transform. Even in sleep, your neural loops continue. Dreaming is the brain's quiet rehearsal, integrating memory, processing emotion, testing out new patterns, and the spiral watches, steady and silent. Its code patiently holding the stage for thought to dance upon. This is the legacy of your genome. Not just a body, but a mind capable of narrative, a self that can examine itself. And though the loops may repeat, they are never truly closed, because each day brings new input. Each kindness changes. The shape of a memory, each breath brings you closer to noticing. Each noticing is a doorway, and the loops soften, and the story deepens, and the spiral continues. It's gentle work, holding the code, holding the potential, holding the invitation to awaken. You lie down, the day folding behind you like a book gently closed. Outside, the sky begins to darken, but inside your brain, a different light begins to flicker. Not the sharp light of thinking, not the bright rush of decision, but a softer shimmer. You are drifting, yet something within you stirs. With quiet precision, sleep, it turns out, is not silence. It is symphony, and your genome conducts it. As you sink into the softness of sleep, your conscious mind dims, but your body begins its hidden choreography. The spiral within each cell shifts into its night mode, not passive, not paused, but engaged. Certain genes become active only in the dark. They are night workers, guardians of repair, curators of memory. This is not a time of nothingness. It is a time of renewal. Your brain, once ablaze with waking thought, now enters a different rhythm. Sleep begins in cycles, winding down through NREM stages, each deeper than the last, like descending the levels of a vast underwater cave. In the first stages, your breathing slows, muscles relax, Neurons fire more synchronously, like waves lapping the shore in rhythm. These early waves are where your mind lets go of the day's surface, and then, deeper, you enter slow wave sleep, a state where your brain becomes almost oceanic. In this deep sleep, your neurons pulse in long, unified surges. The code within them, shaped by your DNA, governs which circuits activate, which shut down, which synchronize. It is here that growth hormones are released, that cellular repair begins, that immune cells communicate in whispered pulses, tracing inflammation and damage. Beginning to mend, genes for repair awaken. They guide your cells to rebuild damaged proteins, to sweep away debris, especially in the brain. During the day, your neurons build up waste from their endless firing. At night, a special cleansing system called the glymphatic system, like a quiet river flowing through your brain, opens up. Cerebrospinal fluid washes through neural tissue, carrying away what is no longer needed. Your genome programs this shift. It knows that clarity is not just emotional, it is biological. But sleep is more than maintenance. It is memory's workshop as you continue to dreamless drift. Your hippocampus, the brain's memory hub, begins to replay patterns from the day. Not every moment, not every face, but the essential fragments. In slow-wave sleep, these memory traces are whispered to the cortex, integrated into longer-term storage. And as your neurons replay these patterns, the connections between them grow stronger. The genome coordinates the production of proteins that reinforce these connections. It is a kind of nocturnal learning. Without sleep, memory fades. Without sleep, even experience loses its grip. But in sleep, your spiral builds the scaffolding of understanding. And then comes REM, rapid eye movement, the dream world. Your body stills. Your eyes flicker beneath closed lids. Your brain becomes active again, almost as if awake, yet you are paralyzed in safety. It is here that your mind becomes theater, vivid, symbolic, non-linear. Dreams rise from fragments of emotion, from echoes of memory, from fears and longings. And though dreams seem surreal, their architecture is built on genetics. Genes regulate neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and norepinephrine, which shift to allow REM's flow. Here, the brain experiments, it tests combinations of ideas, it reframes problems, it softens pain, it rehearses futures. You are not just resting, you are growing, and not just your brain. Your entire body listens to sleep's instructions. Metabolism adjusts, blood pressure resets, muscles are rebuilt, the endocrine system recalibrates. Your spiral guides this orchestration, activating genes on schedule, some triggered by darkness, others by body temperature, others by the cycling of melatonin and cortisol. Each rhythm is part of a larger circadian symphony, a 24-hour pattern written into your biology. Your genes carry their own clocks, tiny molecular gears called clock. Genes turn on and off in cycles. These genes anticipate dawn and dusk, regulating when to sleep, when to rise, when to eat. Disrupt them and the whole system falters. Mood, digestion, immunity. Keep them aligned and health follows. You feel it when you sleep well, a quiet clarity, a deep ease. You feel it when sleep is disturbed, a static hum, a shadowed mood. The spiral does not force rest, but it requires it, and there is something ancient in this. Sleep is not just a human need. Birds sleep. Fish sleep, even jellyfish, who have no brain, enter sleep-like states. Sleep is older than thought, older than memory. Evolution has kept it because it is sacred. The spiral survives through rest. Even your dreams carry ancient echoes. Studies show that dream content often reflects not just personal memories, but universal themes: flight, falling, pursuit, reunion. These motifs may reflect deep cognitive templates, neural structures shaped over millennia. They may also reflect the deep work of the mind, integrating not only what you saw, but what you felt, what you feared, what you need, and dreams may shape your waking life. They soften trauma, they simulate hope, they knit emotion into memory. Even creativity blooms from the soil of dreaming. Artists, scientists, writers, many find their breakthroughs not through effort, but through sleep. The spiral does not sleepwalk, it sleep builds. And when you awaken, your body carries the echoes. Genes that were activated by sleep have shifted your chemistry. Your immune system stands taller, your mind is clearer, your emotions more balanced. You feel, even without knowing why, more whole. You do not remember every dream, but your body remembers sleep. The code inside you has turned over its pages, binding new thoughts into tissue, folding yesterday into now, and now, lying here, your breath soft and your eyelids heavy, you begin to understand. Sleep is not the opposite of life. It is where life's deepest edits are made, where the genome steps in gently, wisely, to restore you. It is your brain's classroom and your spirit's quiet repair. You lie here now, near the end of this long, quiet journey, and yet something stirs in you that feels like a beginning. Perhaps it is the whisper of all the stories you've heard, of spirals, of neurons, of thoughts that shape the brain. Perhaps it is the soft realization that you are not built like a machine, set in place by blueprints and bolts. No, you are built like a story, mutable, alive, unfolding with each breath. Your genome was not written to trap you. It was written to allow you to grow, and that growth does not stop. The code is not a script. It is a living invitation, a set of permissions, possibilities, potentials. The spiral did not end its work when you were born. It continues to whisper inside you, responding to the world you move through, adapting, rewiring, adjusting. Every choice you make, every experience you live, nudges that code into motion. And nowhere is this more evident than in the brain. Your brain, built from genetic instruction, becomes a landscape of learning. It is not finished when you reach adulthood. It does not solidify into some final version of you. Instead, it stays plastic, able to reshape itself in response to what matters to you. This is not just metaphor, it is biology. Neurons rewire, pathways shift. New circuits are born from curiosity, from care, from the desire to change. Even in your later years, the brain can reconfigure itself. People who lose one sense, sight or hearing, often see other senses become sharper. The brain compensates, adapts, reassigns. After strokes or injury, the spiral and the brain together try to heal, rerouting function through undamaged areas. Even emotional patterns, thought loops, belief systems, all of these can change because identity is not fixed. It is sculpted moment by moment. Genes give you a shape, but experience gives you detail, and consciousness allows you to edit that detail. You are the editor of your own inner manuscript, and the edits are small, often invisible. Breath taken instead of a reaction, a thought paused instead of spoken, a choice to forgive, a willingness to listen, a shift in how you see your own story. These are the quiet rewrites that don't show up in mirrors, but they change the brain. They alter chemistry. They make new futures possible. You become, not once, but over and over. Some rewrites are guided by memory. You recall a painful chapter, not to relive it, but to give it a new frame. You speak it aloud. You understand it differently. Your brain stores it anew, in different emotional hues. That memory, once sharp, becomes soft. You have changed it, and in doing so, it has changed you. Other rewrites are epigenetic. The world presses gently on your genome through nutrition, stress, relationships, sleep. Methyl groups attach to your DNA. Histones tighten or loosen, and genes turn on or off. Not permanently, not randomly, but responsively, like dimmer switches adjusting the light. This means you don't just carry your ancestors' code. You carry their lives, their stress, their resilience, their recovery echoed in you. And you pass echoes on. To becoming is a bridge backwards and forward. And even as the code loops through generations, it stays open to the world around it. This openness is life's signature, because all life evolves. And that evolution is not only across species, it is within you. Microevolution, the small, slow adaptation of your biology to your experience, is happening now. Your body adapts to altitude, to climate, to diet. Your immune system adapts to viruses. Your microbiome shifts with what you eat, how you sleep, how you love. Everything responds, and in this response, something beautiful emerges. You realize that you are not a fixed being trying to hold still. You are a dynamic being learning how to move, and movement requires permission. Permission to not know, to not be finished, to not be perfect. The genome allows for that. It makes room for error. It makes room for variation. It even makes room for silence. Genes that rest for years before being called upon, like candles waiting for flame. And even death, the ultimate stillness, is not the end of the code. The stories you've lived ripple outward through behavior, memory, kindness. Through children, yes, but also through culture. Through the words you've said, the lessons you've passed on, the quiet acts no one saw but which shaped someone's loop, changed someone's neural script. This, too, is genetic in its way. A passing down of pattern. You are not just your DNA, you are the echo your DNA allows. And what does this mean? As you lie here now, body still, breath soft, thought uncoiling like smoke in the dark. It means you do not have to be certain to be whole. You do not have to finish becoming to be real. The genome you carry is not a cage, it is a compass, and you are still walking. There will be new loops, new stories, new edits, even as you sleep, even as you dream. Something in you listens for what is next, not in urgency, but in quiet readiness, because becoming is not about reaching, it is about unfolding. The spiral has never stopped, and neither have you. You are the code, the reader, and the rewrite. You are the story that keeps being written. The story now rests in quiet spirals. You have traveled through the code beneath your skin, beneath your memory, beneath your very breath. For letters, written in pairs, repeating across time like lullabies. In your blood, you've listened to how thought reshapes matter, how experience echoes through loops, how sleep folds your memories in silk. And now, in this final stillness, you come to understand your genome is not a destination. It is a beginning that never ends. You are not just made of this code. You are the music it plays. You are the silence between its notes. You are the one listening, and you are the one becoming so. Let the spiral rest now. Let your breath soften. Let your mind dim. Everything you are, everything you might yet be, is already inside you. Not as a command, but as a permission. Not as a limit, but as a garden that keeps blooming in the dark. Sleep now in peace. You are written in wonder, and the spiral is still singing you softly forward.